Hello, and welcome to another astrology video about Venus and Taurus. Yes, I know it's been a long time, but I can't really guarantee that I will, put out a recording or video or whatever you want to call it. This is more of a recording, like at regular intervals because I can't make that promise yet. Maybe at some point in the future I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna put out a video like every 2 or 3 weeks or something, but the way that my life is going right now, I cannot make such promises. So enough of that. Also, disclaimer, as I have mentioned in a previous video, I am using Vedic Astrology, which means that I'm using sidereal zodiac, not tropical zodiac. And I am using whole sign system, not Placidus, which is the preferred house system by Western astrologers. So I'm not going to get into the reasons why I have ended up preferring sidereal over tropical, but I'm just going to say that I have been interested in astrology and have started out with tropical astrology when I was like 15, actually even younger than that. And I'm 29 now, so it was a long time ago. I've basically started with tropical and, have experienced all of the nuances of tropical, of duods and midpoints and all of the different aspects, but I have eventually gotten back to Vedic astrology because after I've analyzed my own chart and charts of the people I've met personally in my life, and as well as many other people that I've just known because they're famous, I've come to the conclusion that Vedic Vedic astrology, meaning the combination of sidereal zodiac and whole sign system, and also the different rules that exist in Vedic astrology, because there are different things that vary. They're much more accurate overall. And there's a much richer kind of mythology behind everything. I won't get into it, but that's pretty much it. The basic sign descriptions remain the same. So the same basic sign description of Taurus that from tropical astrology still applies to Vedic astrology. However, your planetary positions are not going to be the same because there is an offset of about 23 degrees between tropical and sidereal zodiac. So I'm just mentioning this because I have noticed some comments to some of my videos about how I've gotten my placements wrong when I mentioned various celebrities, and I was like, well, no, I did mention that I'm using sidereal zodiac. So if you Google the average astro chart, let's say for, whoever, Trump, and they will say his sun is in Cancer. That's because most websites will refer to tropical zodiac, but I'm actually not even sure if Trump is a Cancer in tropical or sidereal. I think he's a Cancer in tropical zodiac, and most likely if he's a Cancer in tropical, he's a Gemini in sidereal. So, yeah. Okay, enough with the detour. That's just kind of to clarify it. At some point, I may make a video in depth about why I chose sidereal and why I think it's more accurate, but I'll just leave it for now. So, Venus and Taurus, right? Because this is what I said I was going to talk about. So, Taurus, one of my favorite signs. It is actually the first of the earth signs, right? And it's the purest expression of earth energy, meaning it has everything to do with the five senses. It has everything to do with the physical side of life, the physical experience of the soul, basically. So it's everything to do with experiencing the pleasures of life because it's ruled by Venus. And so it's basically the most Venusian sign out there, because Libra is also ruled by Venus, but Libra, being an air sign, is kind of, if you will, a more polished, refined version of Venus. Taurus is more like the very basic, purely hedonistic side of Venus, the purest expression of the love goddess. It's all about, pleasure and fun and sugar spice, everything nice, basically. Femininity, seductiveness, art and beauty. But again, there's I think the main difference between Taurus and Libra when it comes to art is that you will find Taurus people, or people who have a strong Taurus influence in their chart, they're much more attracted to arts that really engage the senses directly, like music, like cooking, and even fashion design to some extent, because you're thinking about clothes are something that you wear, so you feel the fabric, you look at the fabric or the clothes, it's a tactile experience. Or things like pottery, it's a very tactile thing, and it's also a very visual thing. It really engages the senses directly. Also, things like glass manufacturing or making art from glass, it to me is a very Taurus thing, because again, it has to do with a certain craftsmanship there, and it's also the element of you're having to use nature's resources, because you're dealing with natural elements. You are creating glass, right, from natural elements, or you are creating fabric from natural elements like wool, like silk, and also something that you will see with people who have planets in Taurus, and especially Venus, because Venus is about how you experience pleasure and the things that you really love and enjoy in life. You will see that they often prefer quality over quantity. They'll be the kind of people who would rather have a capsule wardrobe, if you will, or 10 pieces of clothing that are really high quality, expensive stuff that are classy and versatile and high quality, like cashmere or silk or whatever, a nice fabric that feels good and looks good, rather than, have 24 cheap imitations just because they're flashy and, eye-catching and cheaper. And Libra, by comparison, because I started describing the arts and stuff, Libra to me is a much more refined sign. So, when you think about Libra art, you would think about something like writing, screenwriting, screenplay writing, or being a novelist, or being a dancer, maybe to some extent. Although Taurus can also be a dancer, but basically things that are not so much about sensuality, not directly, they're more refined in some way. So things that also are intellectual, because Libra is an air sign. Taurus, on the other hand, is all about the senses, and especially singing. Venus, especially with Venus in Taurus, you can see a lot of people who have a really good voice. Not necessarily that they're professional singers, but they may have a very pleasant voice. And Taurus, in general, people who have a strong Venus and strong Taurus, and/or strong Taurus influence, tend to have some basic musical ability. Also, aside from that, so because Venus rules what you love, it also rules your value system, your sense of aesthetics, what you enjoy aesthetically, meaning what is your beauty ideal, if you will. With Venus in Taurus, you have a very strong Venus number one. Because when your planet is in the sign that it naturally rules, it means that it is strong. It is, in tropical astrology, exalted, I think. Actually, no, it's not exalted, it's dignified, I think that's the word. I'm not really sure if Venus in Taurus is dignified by Vedic standards, because the Vedic system is a little bit different, but it is definitely strong. It's a strong Venus, because it is in its own sign. So that means people who have this placement will have some basic Taurian, Venusian traits, regardless of what the rest of the chart may look like. Venus in Taurus in itself, I think shows an interest in arts such as, like I've mentioned, music, but also painting, fashion design, photography, pottery, cooking, embroidery, sewing, anything to do with working on fabric, basically, or working on natural elements. Perfumes, again, great field for Venus people. They will love spending money on perfumes. The women will love high quality makeup products. And also, again, because they have this love, Venus and Taurus will show a love of nature. They love natural things. They will not necessarily care, like, for instance, Venus in Leo or, Aquarius, not necessarily Aquarius, but like Venus in Leo or Venus in Aries, for instance, they will be much more into flashy things. The women especially might really enjoy putting on provocative outfits and, kind of attracting attention in a very obvious manner. But a Venus and Taurus woman will really enjoy bringing out her femininity. They will like, showcasing their curves, but like in a tasteful way. They might wear, figure-flattering clothes, but not like too flashy or showing too much skin. And oftentimes these kinds of women don't really need to do anything flashy because they have a natural kind of feminine warmth that exudes from them. And even men with this placement, I'm not trying to say that they're feminine, but because this is such a earthy, stable, feminine energy, they can, both men and women, can have this calming presence of, being pleasant people, knowing how to make others feel at ease simply by being themselves, because, they're very much rooted into the physical experience, into their bodies and the five senses. And they're also the kinds of people that they tend to have their little things that they enjoy and they will not sacrifice for anything or anyone. Like, if they like having their coffee at 8 in the morning from their favorite mug with just this amount of milk and 2 cups of sugar, they're gonna have it, while listening to jazz or the radio or whatever. No matter what happens, they're not gonna, change that for anything. They have these little things, like they have these little habits that help them enjoy life, because Taurus, more than anything, they need beauty, they need pleasure every single day. And they, oftentimes will focus a lot on the little things. They'll really take their time to enjoy, the extra 15 minutes of lingering in bed in their fine linen, and, or, the smell of their shower gel in the shower, etc., etc. And oftentimes they will enjoy having baths rather than taking showers. Or if they don't take baths every day, when they do it, it's a ritual. Like, they have the bath salts, they have the candles, they have everything. So it's like they really, really enjoy, the pleasure, like dolce far niente, you know, like Italians would say it, the pleasure of doing nothing. Basically, it is also maybe one of the reasons why Taurus is known as being quote unquote lazy, but that's not necessarily true. It can only become a character fault if it's taken to the extreme. Otherwise, they can actually be, worthy of admiration, because they are the kinds of people who, know how to deal with the stress of everyday society, of everyday life in the Western world, where everything is like chasing the next thing and like super busy schedules, and these people will know when and how to take a break. They do not need to be told like, oh, you're working too hard, take a break. They will take a break when they feel that they're too tired. Also, something that I wanted to say about Taurus in general, but also especially with Venus in Taurus, because Venus in Taurus again can show interests. Taurus in itself is connected with paganism and Wicca. The reason for this, again, being their natural interest in nature. These people, even if they are not, again, they may not be professional environmentalists or professional foresters or whatever, or botanists, but they will still care about environmental issues. They will love to spend time in nature. They can really recharge in nature, especially for a woman, because Venus shows what you need to do in order to feel, at ease with yourself, and to basically own yourself, your energy, to feel at peace with yourself. You really need to listen to your Venus and in order to understand your needs. Because oftentimes, if you're like not listening to your Venus, and like if you have like Venus in Taurus, but you're trying to be Venus in Aries, like you're constantly in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and you're never taking a break, or you're constantly sacrificing your pleasure for the sake of achievement, let's say, you will become a cranky, unhappy, and drained woman. And I say especially for women, because the way that Venus works, and I may have mentioned this in previous videos, the way that Venus works, not just Venus, but masculine versus feminine planets, is that the feminine planets, like Venus and the Moon, tend to be owned by the woman, meaning that it's a part of her that she is aware of, that she is owning, that she identifies with, because this is the way that we are culturally kind of raised or, pushed into from birth. Women are women, men are men. And let's face it, even in today's world, even in the most civilized Western countries, you still feel a pressure to act in a certain way if you're a woman versus if you are a man. And so oftentimes what happens with most people is that they tend to own the planets that are of their gender, while simultaneously projecting the other planet's energy onto people of the opposite sex around them. So, for instance, for a woman, a Mars and Jupiter or the Sun will show how she perceives men in her life, or how she relates to men in her life. Of course, there may be exceptions, like, for instance, if you have a woman who has Mars conjunct her Moon, then it may not be such a subconscious thing for her, because she is, in her case, masculine and feminine energies are merging in her chart, so she can really own her masculine energy. But a woman who doesn't have that, let's say a woman has Moon conjunct Venus in Taurus, and she has Mars in Aries, that means that she will most likely identify as a super feminine girly girl, whereas when other people will point out you actually can be very ambitious and very much a go-getter because of her Mars in Aries, she will not feel that way, or sometimes she will literally completely repress that and projected onto the men in her life. So she will be attracted to Aries-type men, and while simultaneously feeling that she is not at all like her Mars in Aries. But, so, where did I start from? I kind of forgot. So, yeah, this is about projection, and about women. So, the reason I mentioned this about women is because women especially are in touch naturally with their feminine side of the personality, their anima, as Carl Jung would say it. And Venus and Moon in your chart as a woman will show the kind of activities that are most natural to you, the things that you really on a deep level yearn to do. And Venus in Taurus very much points out that you are a typical girly girl. Even if you have, like, let's say a high-powered corporate job, you still feel the need on some level to act feminine, to put on a nice dress, to put on makeup and perfume, and maybe, focus on doing feminine things like cooking a nice meal, honoring Mother Nature, keeping pets, cutesy, girly stuff. And if you feel that, there's no reason why you should repress it. And so, what I started out by saying, that I feel Venus in Taurus might be attracted to Wicca, especially, or to paganism. And basically any kind of philosophy that centers around honoring the feminine energy in the world, in the universe, because that's really the basis of paganism. It's not really the basis, but it did kind of develop from matrifocal, or whatever you want to call it, matriarchal societies, when women were actually considered magical beings because they could give birth, and back then people didn't know that it actually takes two to tango, right? They didn't know that it actually takes a man's sperm to fertilize a woman's egg, but only, primitive people only saw that women were giving birth, and so they were the ones that gave life. And because of that, initially women were revered, not just women, but everything feminine in nature was revered, The night was honored because it was the time when everything went to sleep and regenerated. Winter was honored because it was the time when nature rested, and it was, getting ready to be reborn in the spring. And later it got to a place of balance where both feminine and masculine energies were equally revered and honored, right? That's really the basis of Wicca and paganism. Basically, Wicca is like a modern term for all-time paganism, which has been around for thousands of years. And when I say paganism, I guess, paganism is basically a term given by early Christians to everyone that was not Christian in Europe. And so it includes druidry and stuff like that, and things to do with crystals. Again, crystals. If you see, Venus and Taurus in someone's chart, I would almost be willing to bet that they will love crystals. They will have crystals in their house. At the very least, they will have one of those Himalayan salt lamps in their home, because these people feel good when they have natural settings around them. Whether it's they have a pet which they adore, they love having plants. I have a friend who has Sun in Taurus, and she's crazy about her little balcony plant collection. They love nature, and they see the beauty of nature. And they also enjoy things like collecting crystals, things like crystal therapy, things like yoga, which calms the mind and the body, and it seeks to create a balance of mind and body. Okay, aside from that, I'm just checking my notes here every time I'm making a pause, because I wrote down a few main ideas that I want to check. Right, I have already mentioned the artistic talent. Also, Venus also shows your attitude towards money, as I have mentioned before in previous videos. And Venus and Taurus, they happen to have a natural talent for managing their finances. It's not necessarily that they're, I don't like the idea of fate. Let me just say that right off the bat. Astrology is not about fate. There is no particular, astrological aspect that just says, no matter what you do, this is where you will end up. It's quite different from that, actually. It's just about influences, and ultimately what you choose to do with your life is entirely up to you. But Venus and Taurus people will tend to have a natural talent for managing money. They will have a natural, flair for business. So if they are at all inclined throughout, of course, one particular aspect, one planet in one sign cannot show whether you have an actual real chance at being successful as a business owner, but it will show a basic affinity for, making money. In a very basic way, Taurus is, they have this love of wealth. They have a love of the finer things in life. And because of that, they learn from an early age that, money gets them things. And so it's good to learn how to make money. So what I'm trying to point out here is that it's not necessarily like Taurus are, gifted from God, or like they were, they're born rich or anything like that. But oftentimes what happens is that they just have this interest from a very young age. And so if they have other aspects in their chart that points in this direction, they can turn to various businesses, especially relating to arts. So about romance, as you would expect, Venus in Taurus is very, 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 very romantic, because you have Venus in its own sign. It's basically, just imagine that painting of, I think it's Botticelli, of Venus coming out of the seashell in the sea. That's Venus in Taurus, basically. That's like Venus at home, in her home. So it's, they are very, very romantic. Like Taurus would suggest, they tend to be very steady and very slow in opening up emotionally, both the men and the women, but especially the women, again, because women tend to be the ones that identify with their Venus placements. Men, on the other hand, will like a Taurus kind of woman, because that's what Venus shows in a man's chart, usually. It shows the wife, basically, the wife/girlfriend. It shows the kind of ideal that he has in a woman. So men who have this placement will often be quite traditional. Actually, women as well. They tend to be very traditional. The women will be the kinds of women that, love to take their time dating. They will not rush into things. They want to feel that they are safe and secure, and that they can really trust a person before they can really start to invest emotionally into a relationship. But once they do invest, they become very, very, very loyal, and very committed. And they can be very good wives because, Venus, they will tend to be very feminine. They will always care about being the woman in the relationship. This is not to say that, of course, she cannot hold down a job and be very independent, but ultimately when it comes down to a relationship, she will really enjoy being a woman. She will like to wear dresses. She will like to cook every now and then when she can. She will like to take care of everybody because that's what Taurus is. Taurus and Cancer are the most feminine, romantic, domestic women out there. And so with Taurus, the women will, they may not be necessarily 100% homebodies, although they will really enjoy spending time at home. They will enjoy, beautifying their surroundings and creating a nice nest. But they will also be very capable of going out there and making money and, spreading femininity all around, basically. At work and at home as well. That's what I'm trying to say. And also the men will tend to like, of course, beautiful women, because Venus in Taurus, you have to have a beautiful woman with that kind of a placement. And especially, not just beautiful, but like a very particular kind of aesthetic appearance. Because Taurus really shows a very classically feminine figure, oftentimes hourglass shape, voluptuous, tending towards voluptuous, not necessarily overweight, although they may go there. If anything, I would say that a man with this placement probably would be more likely to like an overweight woman than a stick-thin woman, because they, Taurus is all about the shapes, they're about curviness and about plumpness, because it's about sensuality, and you cannot really be an embodiment of someone who is very sensual unless you have a lot of meat on you, because otherwise it shows that you don't really enjoy eating. So men with this placement, they will like classically beautiful women, not just who have a nice shape, but also a very pretty face. Oftentimes, wide eyes with long eyelashes, a plump lips, a classically oval face, sometimes fair skin, etc., etc., nice hair, nice long lush hair, everything that you would think in describing the Venus archetype is basically the ideal. So, in other words, these men will not particularly go for the blue-haired, punk-like, women that maybe Venus in Aquarius might go for. So yeah, that's so much about aesthetics. Right, just to give you kind of an imagery, I haven't actually checked the charts of these women, but this is kind of like what I envision the Venus in Taurus to look like, the Venus in Taurus aesthetic ideal to look like. Something like Sophia Loren or Monica Bellucci or Jennifer Lopez or Marilyn Monroe. Basically, that's kind of along the lines of what they're going for. The women would love to look like that. The men would like to have a partner that looks like that. And for some examples who actually have Venus in Taurus, Jennifer Lopez actually does have Venus in Taurus herself, opposite Scorpio moon, and I think obviously is very fitting for her. She is super feminine, and this, is not a video about Venus moon aspects, but I might as well throw it in there. Venus moon aspect, conjunction or opposition, because in Vedic astrology that's the only two aspects that these signs can form. I will get into that at some point in the future, but there is no square or like trine or sextile in Vedic astrology. So yeah, because when these two signs, these two planets, Venus and Moon, have an aspect, a conjunction or an opposition, this shows a very feminine person. Men with this kind of placement tend to be womanizers because they're very in touch with their feminine side, and they can be very charming and very sociable, very, very classy, etc. They know how to woo other women, sorry. But the women who have this aspect themselves are super feminine. They will really, and oftentimes they can show, a woman who likes to be curvy and take care of herself, definitely takes care of herself, of her physical appearance, likes to wear, makeup and nice clothes and etc. etc. And I definitely feel like this fits Jennifer Lopez because she is still in great shape at her age, which is, I'm not sure exactly, but definitely over 40. And also Venus and Taurus in her case definitely shows that interest in music and a talent for music and for art, especially. Also, really funny, both Jackie Kennedy and John F. Kennedy had Venus and Taurus, and I feel like this is really funny just when you think about the whole Marilyn Monroe situation. I remember a while ago I watched a documentary about Marilyn Monroe, and actually I think it was about Jackie Kennedy, sorry. And it was actually mentioned that John F. Kennedy had an affair with Marilyn Monroe, and who happens to really embody that Venus in Taurus kind of beauty, perfect hourglass figure, full chest, classically pretty face, wide eyes, etc., etc. And so John F. Kennedy had an affair with this woman who really embodied his feminine ideal because he had Venus in Taurus. And apparently Jackie Kennedy at some point tried to emulate Marilyn Monroe, or felt like, because it was also, in the media, of course, it was pointed like it was a competition between them. But if you look at their chart and you see she also had Venus in Taurus, it could very well be that she actually would have liked to be more like Marilyn Monroe, to be more like the glamorous, siren, screen siren who is voluptuous and sexy, etc. Just as a kind of side note, to be taken with a grain of salt, because again, you cannot really say too much based on just one particular planet placement. Russell Crowe has Venus and Taurus, which again really is cool with him because I feel like he really embodies this kind of a person that loves nature. And I remember reading that he has a ranch somewhere, I think in Australia or New Zealand. I know that he's from New Zealand. I don't know if he lives there, but I do remember reading that he loves basically living on a farm or a ranch or whatever it is, and just enjoys spending time in nature and getting all, gritty and dirty and away from the glamour of a movie star life. Very fitting for a Venus in Taurus. Kylie Minogue, again, great talent, someone who definitely portrays herself as a very sensual person, very artistic, very feminine, definitely has the hourglass figure. Now, I don't remember what her ascendant was. I think it was Cancer. I'm not sure. But if it's Cancer, it doesn't hurt, right? Because Cancer is also a very feminine sign. But it definitely, in her case, explains the talent for singing. Bob Dylan, again, great singing and music writing abilities. Definitely an artistic talent there. William Shakespeare. Now, William Shakespeare, obviously, if his birth chart, if his birth time was correct, also had Venus and Taurus. And like I said, right, I mean, talk about romantic. I'm just gonna leave it at that, right? I mean, there's not much to say. He was as romantic as it gets. And then you also have Elon Musk. And the reason I wrote Elon Musk is because in his particular case, I remember reading him himself, obviously, I don't feel like he really portrays the Venus and Taurus energy, but his wife, actually the woman that he married twice, Tallulah Riley, if you Google her, you will see that she is very much Venus and Taurus beauty kind. I mean, you know, super feminine, curvy hourglass figure, kind of, you know, soft looking, and if I read correctly, I think they were married twice. I don't know if he's still married to her, but married twice, that shows, like, you know, a lot of interest there on his part. So yeah, and I feel like it's interesting to point out with men, when you look at their Venus, it shows the kind of women that they are really attracted to. Eva Green, again, great artist, very feminine, very, kind of a sex symbol as well, I think, because again, like Venus and Taurus women, they really exude a very feminine kind of energy, and, yeah, obviously it makes them appealing to a large male audience. And Colin Farrell, again, the reason I wrote Colin Farrell was because I googled some of his, like, past girlfriends, and if you look at them, again, classic descriptions that you would expect for someone who has Venus and Taurus. Curvy women, classically pretty women who are well made up and, you know, basically look and act like women 100%. And also something that I think would be interesting, that I've written down, is a list of people who have Venus conjunct ascendant. And the reason I wrote this is because I feel like, if you have Venus in Taurus, you will like people who project Venus energy. And that oftentimes means either someone who has someone who has ascendant in Taurus, because the ascendant is your personality, but it also relates to your physical appearance. So people with Venus in Taurus will definitely be attracted to people who have ascendant in Taurus, especially if the Venus in Taurus person is a man and the ascendant in Taurus person is a woman, and they're both straight. Otherwise, it may vary. But basically, if you have, like, Venus in Taurus, you will be attracted to people who have Venus on their ascendant, right? Who really project a kind of Venus energy. And just to mention that, I'm just gonna start with the one that I found most obvious, Christina Hendricks. I mean, I was so thrilled when I found this one because I have had kind of a girl crush on her for ages. I have watched Mad Men, and to me, ever since I saw that show, to me, she just seemed like the embodiment of, like, the perfect, you know, Taurus woman. She's like textbook Taurus, you know, the super curvaceous hourglass figure, you know, that pretty doll face, you know, with the full lips, but at the same time, the way that she is, you know, portrayed in the TV show, playing this character, who is also, you know, not just super feminine, but also kind of super intelligent and kind of basically business savvy, is so Taurus, like, oh my god. And guess what? Christina Hendricks, the actress, happens to have ascendant in Taurus and Venus conjunct her ascendant. And her Venus falls into her first house. I mean, you know, such a treat because, wow. I mean, wow. And so, yeah, basically that is like the archetype of Venus in Taurus beauty ideal to some extent. You know, that is, you know, the body type, that is the demeanor, you know, the kind of poised demeanor. I'm not necessarily talking about Christina Hendricks, the actress, but the character in Mad Men. But also Christina Christina Hendricks, the actress, physically really embodies that kind of Taurus beauty, right? And the reason I picked, Venus conjunct ascendant women is because Venus conjunct ascendant really makes a person attractive. So if you see someone with Venus conjunct ascendant, they will always have a touch of a Venus/Taurus energy. But depending on the sign it sits, it tends to show a beautified expression of the sign that it is in. Another example is, for instance, Angelina Jolie, who has a very tight Venus ascendant conjunction in Cancer. And in her case, it really points out the Cancer beauty, because Cancer is this super feminine sign. I think Marilyn Monroe also had her ascendant in Cancer, but she didn't have like the Venus ascendant conjunction. So it wasn't as Venusian as Angelina Jolie. But Cancer ascendant women, they tend to be super feminine in that kind of textbook description of the perfect fairy tale princess. They're oftentimes fair-skinned, light-eyed, having light hair. And I remember reading that actually Angelina Jolie is a natural blonde, or she started out in life being a natural blonde and then she started dyeing her hair because she felt like it was more attractive or something like that. But the bottom line is that she really looks like a very beautiful Cancer ascendant. She has the big mouth that is also kind of full-lipped. She has the wide eyes that are very dreamy looking and really light blue in color. And the wide face, typical for Cancer and for Venus influence, Venus/Taurus influence on the ascendant. And also the body, I wouldn't say the most curvaceous, but definitely some Taurus, energy there, because her body is quite robust looking, definitely full-breasted. So she's not like a dainty, delicate kind of looking person. Lana Del Rey, I have mentioned her before, has a Venus in Aries conjunct her ascendant in Aries. Again, she looks like a beautified, ascendant in Aries person. She has the Venus energy of, very glamorous, full-lipped, wide-eyed kind of image. She has a nice voice, a nice singing voice, and a nice speaking voice. Very glamorous, curvy, but slimmer looking than, for instance, Christina Hendricks. And the reason for this is, her ascendant is in Aries, which is a very athletic, very slim and wiry kind of energy. But here you have her Aries ascendant blending with the Venus. So you have kind of like a curvy, but not too curvy sort of physical appearance. Then, aside from her, you have Beyonce, who has Venus conjunct ascendant in Virgo, and Jupiter is there as well. So she has like Venus, Jupiter in Virgo in the first house, conjunct her ascendant in Virgo. And this is, again, so cool, because to me, Beyonce, I think she is a Virgo in a tropical zodiac, so I connected her to Virgo in that way, but also to me, she always looked like a textbook Virgo face, because she has the inverted triangle face shape, which is in all of the traditional astrology texts where you read, like, if you've ever read, like, ascendant in sign descriptions, they will tell you Virgo ascendant has an inverted triangle or an oval face. And to me, Beyonce really looks like a Virgo ascendant with her face. And she has that Venus on the ascendant, curvaceous body. Like, holy crap, right? But her face is just, she's this really kind of pure expression, very pretty, kind of clear-cut features, with the wide eyes, perfectly oval shaped eyes, nice skin and everything, like very Taurus, but also you can definitely see some Virgo influence on her ascendant. Also Adele. Adele has, let me see here. I'm not really sure. I think Adele has, I forgot to write it. Crap. I think it was Gemini, but I'm not sure. In any case, she does have Venus conjunct ascendant, and she also has Moon and Saturn in the 7th house opposite her ascendant. So remember that every planet that aspects your ascendant will also influence your physical appearance and your personality and the way you present yourself to the world, because those are all the things that the ascendant stands for. And the reason I wrote this down is because Adele also has that Moon, Venus combination, but she also has Saturn there. Saturn tends to show hardships, and it also tends to show a mature look and demeanor. And this kind of is a good example, and this is no disrespect to Adele or anything, but it is a good example of the Taurian tendency to put on weight. I didn't mention this in the general description, but they definitely have a tendency to put on weight. Taurus, probably more than any other sign, loves to eat. So again, I'm not talking about, destiny here. I'm not talking about genetics. It's not like if you have planets in Taurus, you will automatically be fat. But because Taurians are, feel like they are born to experience the physical pleasures of life, they will find it very, 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 very hard to deny themselves. And so it'll be harder for them than for anyone to, impose some kind of a strict diet on themselves, or, to say things like, I'm never going to have sugar, or I'm never going to have bread. Things like that are very difficult for them, because they really see food as a part of enjoying life. And so they feel like if they would cut food from their life, they would just be deprived of a great pleasure. And this is one of the reasons why people who have a strong Venus / Taurus influence, they tend to develop weight problems. And this is especially true for people who also have like Moon in Taurus, Moon and or Venus in Taurus, because these two planets are emotional, and they're feminine, and they stand for what you love when it comes to Venus, and the Moon also stands for your basic mindset and your personality in Vedic astrology. So yeah, pretty much it means that, Moon in Taurus means your mind is set on food. And even people with, Venus on the ascendant, they will definitely have a tendency, again, to put on weight. Any person actually who has a strong Venus in their chart will have this kind of a tendency to put on weight. It depends on other factors, if they offset it or not. So Adele is kind of this example, but my point is with Adele is that even at her highest weight, she was, very beautiful. She's still very beautiful, has always had an amazing voice, and she really embodies that kind of a Taurus energy. I forgot to write down what her ascendant was. I think it was in Gemini. But it's not the point. The point is that she really embodies that kind of a Venus energy, because of her Venus on the ascendant. And also, Cameron Diaz, or whatever you pronounce it like, has Venus conjunct ascendant in Gemini. And one of the reasons why I wrote this down is because in her particular case, she's really kind of tall and slim. And so she really has that typical Gemini physique, but she still has the Venus influence there, and because of that, she presents a really aesthetically pleasing version of the Gemini ascendant, right? She basically has the best, she has she's one of the better looking Gemini ascendants, I guess, if you want to put it that way. She has the wide eyes, if I remember correctly, she also had a good singing voice. If I remember right, she actually recorded something. I think it was a song for Vanilla Sky, correct me if I'm wrong, or something. I don't know if she's actually done records or whatever, but I do know that she has a good singing voice. And she also, especially in her youth, she really embodied that kind of a sex symbol energy, of a glamorous movie star, definitely very pretty. And even though she had this really kind of tall physique, she still had some basic curves there. So she wasn't like some kind of a stick thin looking person. And so the reason why I mentioned these, like Venus conjunct ascendant, was to kind of show what kind of people a Venus and Taurus person might like. Maybe Venus and Taurus people will listen to this, and I would be really curious to hear their opinion about the people that I've mentioned who have like Venus influence on their ascendant. And that's it, and I hope to get to you soon with Venus and Gemini. Until then, thank you, and thank you for watching and liking, and please comment if you have anything to comment. If not, well, farewell.